Today is one subject matter concerning the life divine. 2 points I want to tackle this morning. Because life divine presents so many avenues for new approach to the problem of man's individual and collective life that it is not possible to deal all of them in one single exposition or one sitting or one session. We chose one or two just now. One is a physical body in the scheme of supramental perfection. That's one. Second is a place of material and economic organization and ethics in collective life of man from the point of view of life divine. These two subjects we choose for trying to see how we can look at these problems. The place of physical body in the scheme of any perfection, and particularly supramental perfection, uh, this concerns or this is related to the movement of ascent from mind to the supermind and the descent from the supermind to the mental, vital, and physical consciousness. It is this descent that brings about the transformation of human nature, including the transformation of the physical being. For example, mind would function as mind of light if the supramental descent took place in mind. That is to say, it would be a mind. At present, the mind of man is subject to half light and half darkness. Now, if mind would become, after the descent of the supermind, the mind of light, constantly working under the guidance, inspiration, and protection of the higher light, acting constantly as its instrument, then the question arises, what would be the body? If the supermind descended into the physical, one result we can predict is the descent of supermind in mind will make the mind function constantly as a mind of light. Now, mind is a movement of mixture of light and darkness, of truth and falsehood. You see, if it became an instrument of the supermind by the descent of the supermind, then mind would act constantly as an instrument of light. That is to say, it would obey and carry out and express illumination, light, or truth, which the supermind transfers to it, gives to it by its descent. That would be the function. Sri Aurobindo has written a book on it, The Mind of Light, one small book at the end of, I think it was published in 1950 almost, you see. The last book that he wrote, The Mind of Light, supramental descent would create in mind, if it descended, the mind of light. Then the relative question that arises for us is, what would happen to the body? How it would affect the laws of the body? Is it possible to transform the gross and seemingly undivine body into what might be termed a perfect or, if possible, a divine body? That is the question. Or is there a divine use of the body as there is of mind and life? Because after becoming the mind of light, mind would function as an instrument of the higher light. It would act as its, its servant or its duty as its instrument. If you put metaphysically the same question, if the spirit has assumed form, the material form, what is the place of form in the ultimate fulfillment? When it would descend into the body. Though the Upanishad has not hesitated to state that Anna is Brahma, matter is Brahman, matter is the infinite, the seeker of spiritual life and even a religious man finds the body a great obstacle and a bondage. This is the attitude taken with regard to the body by religious people, philosophic people, and by seekers of truth. A body is found a great bondage and an obstacle from which he seeks escape through ascetic rejection or even mortification. This is the general remedy. Man finds that life is manifesting itself in matter, and because it is manifesting itself in inconscient matter, it is compelled to accept grossness and subjection to pain and death. And that mind in matter becomes limited, dull, and blind. In fact, one finds matter, life, and mind, each of them is trying to overpower the other two in life. if you take these for three, matter, life, and mind, you will see that each one is trying to overpower, matter is trying to overpower life and mind, life is trying to overpower matter and mind is trying to overpower matter and life. Like that. You see, constantly they are trying to overpower each other. Matter may be said to be the fundamental element of our earth. In fact, there are people who consider it ignorance incarnate. You see, it's a very, very most concrete form of ignorance because it is inconscience itself. It is ignorance incarnate on whose dark background mind and life seem to arise. You see. Matter seems only form without any spirit or consciousness pervading it. It seems a work of brute and inconscient energy. The second thing about the working of matter is that it seems to be subject to mechanical laws. It doesn't seem to be operating under conscious laws, somebody guiding it or a mechanism inside telling it to do what is to be done. It seems to be operating by mechanical laws. It opposes life and mind by its sheer inertia and thus renders the conquest of ignorance by them difficult if not impossible. The third characteristic is that the process of division reaches its culmination in matter. This infinite divided into finite reaches its last point of finitehood, atom or electron or whatever the last particle in matter, which imposes the law of struggle, dissatisfaction, pain, and death on the being. Now, according to Sri Aurobindo, the omnipresent reality is the basic truth of the universe. The question then arises, how does matter arise in this one omnipresent reality? We have partly considered it in our studies of life divine. Now, what we call matter is really energy. And the question would be, why does energy take the form of matter? Is it the sense organism of the individual mind that gives the impression of matter? Evidently, no. Because it is the universal mind that is the creator of matter. That we have studied in Life Divine, if you remember. That is the cosmic mind that creates, creator of matter. Matter is substance of one conscious being, phenomenally divided within itself by the action of universal mind. Material substance, this is from Life Divine. Material substance is a form in which mind, acting through sense, contacts a conscious being of which it is itself a movement of knowledge. Then we can ask, are not inconscience, inertia, division, and death the original and eternal laws of matter? If this is the origin of matter, if mind has been responsible for the creation of what we feel as matter, and material substance is a form of mind trying to contact its own self in movement by sensation, then we can ask, are these laws eternal? Inconscience and inertia and division and so on. Sri Aurobindo says, no. Matter is the creation of cosmic mind, and for that, an extreme fragmentation of the infinite was needed as a starting point. Hence, however one may go on dividing the atom, there will always be the infinitesimal particle left. One would never arrive at a void or zero. Subtler and subtler states of matter exist. Matter is not this gross that we see. That is what I think Arthur Eddington wrote in one of his books, Gifford Lectures. He said that matter is now become so difficult to be explained to the man in the street, to the normal man, that the language of the scientist would sound like magic or like superstitious language to the ordinary man, because he would tell him, if you ask him what is a table, then he would say the table is composed of infinitely small particles, electrically charged particles which are moving at the speed of light, and they bounce against each other so fast and so quickly that solidity of wood is not disturbed, and the hand of the writer doesn't go through, though it is only electrically charged particles that are Well, the man in the street won't understand it easily. You see, he would say it is all right. Wood I understand, but when you say that it is composed of electrically charged electrons or particles, I don't follow it. Well, subtler and subtler states of matter. This is a reference to relevance to the position which Sharundu is building up for a possible fulfillment of the human body in the scheme of supramental perfection. When you follow that ideal, then you have first to see what actually has been accepted, how far the grossness and the inertia of matter has been, well, probed into, and what are the conclusions to which science has come. The one conclusion is that there are subtler and subtler states of matter which exist. Ether as an intangible and almost spiritual support of matter also exists, but the presence is not detectable by experiment. We cannot find it out by experiment that ether exists. So he says in Life Divine, matter is Satchidananda represented to his own mental experience as a formal basis of objective knowledge, action, and delight of existence. But to our normal experience, substance is real in proportion to its solid resistance. A substance becomes real when you can handle it, touch it, when it is refuses to be liquid or air. It is solid. Resistance and durability of form. More subtle the substance, less material is the form. If the substance is more subtle, the form is less material. It doesn't take form. You see, it doesn't give you a solid form. If the substance is, well, less material, means subtle. If we look at the process of evolution from matter to spirit, we find an ascending series of substance, which you have already considered in the one day before, you see. When the substance is less bound to the form, it is more subtle and flexible. Drawing away from durability of form, we draw towards eternity of essence. You take flowers. Now, to take a flower, if the flower is a strong, fragrance, then the particle of fragrance have to pervade the air, is it not? That is how it is distributed in the air. Now you take 1 ton of flowers and you reduce it to an essence, it becomes so small. You see that's it. When in that can, if one little thing is left out, it will pervade the air in no time. Well, people who use scent or something like that, but scent is a rough way of doing it, but still, I mean, the fragrance of the flower of with the essence the scent holds. If the flower alone is there, it won't be able to make itself, effective to the extent that the essence that is taken up in the scent is able to do. Because scent gives it a medium by which it is able to pervade itself in the subtle atmosphere at once. A quick permeability is given to it. It is because it is essence and not form. You see, in the flower, the big form is provided to give little essence, little perfume. Little perfume has to take a big form for its receptacle, for its manifestation, for its expression, or for its body, so to say. Here, the body is almost, reduced to liquid, which can become gas in no time, which can go to the gaseous state without your effort. You see, ether or spirit. You see, and because of the medium being subtle, the form being subtle, the pervasion in the subtle atmosphere becomes very quick, and there is no form on which the essence has to depend for its expression. You see, this more subtle the form, the quicker is the work which the sense is able to do. Well, he says, drawing from the durability of form, you draw toward eternity of essence. So when the consciousness rises from mind to the supermind, the series of substance goes from gross material to subtle spiritual, and it would undergo a corresponding transformation. When the consciousness rises, then the body is able to also correspond to or respond. In the beginning. First it responds to the vibration of the consciousness to which the man's spirit or his being rises. When the being rises from mind to the supermind, or in between the layers of higher mind, illumined mind, overmind, or supermind, the body correspondingly participates because, well, in the process of ascent, there is necessarily a change in the substance of the whole being. And even though immediately the physical substance is not changed, that takes place a change in the vibration of nervous and physical being, which is not really a full transformation, but it shows that the body is able to vibrate or to assume or to accept and respond to the action of a higher consciousness. Now, if you, for instance, take up any spiritual experience, take up the experience of peace. Now, if you take up the experience of peace, you will see that peace is not only of the spirit, but that when it comes down into the mind, it has a corresponding vibration on the nervous and physical being. When it comes down to the vital, it is still more intense, the action on the nervous and the physical being. When it comes down to the nervous system, it almost can make the body feel the solidity of the peace that is descending. The body can participate in the peace and almost feel the solid aspect of peace, so strong that a force of disease or a vibration contrary to the maintenance of peace is not accepted. The peace can become so solid, so firmly established in the physical and nervous system that any vibration that comes to disturb it, well, is met by the peace. Now, this is we are sounding the potentiality of the human body, remember, in the scheme of supramental perfection. Yeah. In the mind and life substance, in the mind, if the mind and life substance underwent a change, there is no reason to suppose that body, which is seemingly undivine and gross, would remain unchanged. In fact, the present limits of the body are not permanent. It is not the sole possible rhythm of cosmic nature, as Sri Aurobindo puts it. Body can be transfigured, and in the words of Sri Aurobindo, Earth Mother too may reveal to us her Godhead. Mother Earth is the physical, the material, and she may reveal to us the Godhead which is there within her. Even without any radical spiritual change or transformation, we find athletes and physical culturists by sheer training achieving remarkable results, isn't it? To show the limits of the body, feats of endurance and strength that verge on the miraculous. Moreover, under various kinds of psychological stress and strains, the human body shows extraordinary range of capacity and endurance. Now, this you have to see from Greek time right up to all historical evidences, if you collect. You'll be surprised to know that man has said that body cannot change, the body cannot change, but how many, extraordinary, feats which can be almost miraculous have been performed by the human body. You know about that Greek man had to run 150 miles in 2 days to carry the news of war from north of Greece, means Athens, to Sparta and back. The whole distance was covered. And I told you in Tibet, for instance, this whole of Tibet is covered in 2 or 3 days by one man. And he almost flies. The instance of the man whose foot was amputated and hand was cut off in war, in the Napoleonic campaign in Moscow. You see, while Napoleon was retreating from Moscow, one soldier marched 3 miles with his foot amputated and hand cut off. There are extraordinary instances where the body has shown the limit of how far you can go with, training, with will, with, of course, regularity also, not merely by one day's affair. Perhaps they are training for years together, but body can be trained. There was one case I remember of a man in Sweden, I think. Was it in Helsinki? It might not be Sweden, it may be Finland. I don't remember now. It might be Sweden for the matter of that. There was a cycle race, and a man of 65, 40 miles cycle. He competed with the young boys. Young boys. They're quite hale and hearty, nothing. And of course, you have to maintain certain conditions in order to maintain that physical efficiency. You see, but these are things that have actually happened. So, limits of how far fasting can be carried by a human body. 100 days, 110 days in India, the giants. 120 days. McSweeney in Ireland, 90 days. So, you see, how far body can be bodily changes are not fixed. I mean, the present formula is a workable formula. Normally, certain things happen. So people say these are laws, but the potentialities of the body are immense. Well, even from that point of view, supposing somebody is sick in the house, and I have seen old dames waking 3 full nights without wink of sleep, no reaction. She is all the time active. There is marriage in the house, and I have seen, you see, people working for weeks together, preparing for it, going through it. Afterwards, they have a little reaction, and they lie down and are flat for a week or 10 days. But during that time, it is tremendous what strain one can go through physically. You see, there are seasons in India, and cotton season particularly, when cotton is taken to the market. You see, then there are agents, you see, who deal with cotton. So the farmers bring it to the agent, and the agent is dealing with the bigger firms. At that time, he has no time to take his food or sleep or nothing. He's only cotton. He's only cotton all the time. And you'll be surprised that that man ordinarily should tell him, let us go out now. Oh, it is very hot. If you go, it is raining. At the time when there is cotton, no rain, no hot, nothing, he is able to go and do anything. Hunger, thirst, everything. That shows the elasticity of the physical to react to a psychological situation, an accident or sickness or good occasion, or immediately brings about some conception of how far human body can change. You see, with only psychological pressure or some decision or some need or I remember myself, for instance, when Sherlock got his fracture of the foot, femur, in 1938, November 23rd, doctor said that he wanted plaster of Paris. I called the doctor. Mother called me. Mother rang rung the bell. So I went there. I was the only one awake there. At that time, I was heating water for her bath. And she said that something has happened to his foot. You immediately go and call Dr. Manilal from Baroda. He was a medical officer from Baroda State. He had come for darshan. He had come for visit. He was a disciple. So I ran to him and called him. Well, when he came, he said it is fracture. And I must have plaster of Paris to put it in mold. I went to our dispensary down there. There was no plaster of Paris there because we didn't prepare for accidents like that. So I had to run to the hospital and get the plaster of Paris. The speed with which I ran, I still remember, could have competed with motor car. Because when I came back, doctor said, "Oh, you so quickly brought from the downstairs." He didn't think I had been to the hospital. He couldn't imagine. He told me, "Oh, you went so very quickly. We had it on our dispensary." I told him, "No, I brought it from the hospital." He looked at me. I brought it from the hospital. In a time that would have been taken from going to the dispensary downstairs, just opposite to the window. You see, that time I took, and I ran because of that. If you ask me to compete with a boy, I won't be able to do it. If you say these boys are running and you run with them, then I say, well, let them run. I don't feel like running. I wouldn't feel like running. So that stress it is that makes maybe some reaction, but what I mean is that body has a limit of change, elasticity, and transformation which has not been tapped by man consciously. You see, science has sounded some potentialities of matter, and it is a truism to say that man's body is living matter. Man's body is nothing else but living matter, is it? Yes, the powers of man's physical body and senses in their gross functioning are very limited. The sense of sight, the sense of hearing has a very poor range. But these very senses are capable of far greater range of action because they have their subtle forms and subtle counterparts. You see, they are not really dependent on the organs through which the sense is independent of sight. Sight is independent of eyes. Man with no eyesight can see. Absolutely, this has been proved. Men with bandaged eyes have seen. Blind people see. So sight is not entirely dependent upon the organ of eye, I mean the sight. Still more remarkable are the hardly tapped powers of the mind. When some of the powers of the spirit are awakened in man, or when man's nature undergoes a transformation by the descent of the supramental consciousness, then not only would unknown spiritual powers become active, but the very physical consciousness of man would have to undergo such a change that a far greater degree of immunity from disease would be attained, leading ultimately to the conquest of death. It is the operation of the higher consciousness that should really bring about this change. The schools of yoga in India mention 5 states of substance, each corresponding to a degree of our being: the material or annamaya, you see, the physical; vital or pranamaya; the mental manomaya. I have already dealt with it in psychology, you see. The ideal vijnanamaya; spiritual or beatific anandamaya. So to each grade of the soul there corresponds a grade of substance. To each plane of this consciousness there is a substance which corresponds to its functioning. The soul dwells in each simultaneously. There is no isolation between the substances of the soul manifesting a universe. They are called koshas or sheaths of the body. Though we are normally conscious only of the physical body, it is possible to open oneself to other bodies, psychic and bodies. Psychic and occult phenomena we have come across in life, which are due to the intervention of the subtle sheaths into the physical. 6 nervous centers of life in the physical body, corresponding to 6 centers of the vital and mental faculties in the subtle, have been discovered by the yogis in the past, and they have found out subtle physical exercises by which centers that are now closed could be opened and man can enter into the higher spiritual life. Our substance does not end with the physical body. The conquest of the physical limitations by a power of supramental substance is quite possible. How far this is actually possible today was illustrated in the example of the master's body remaining incorrupt for 100 hours after he withdrew from it. I am giving you the actual instance of himself when the physical was able to remain uncorrupt without corruption for 100 hours after his withdrawal from the body. That shows that it is possible to change the body substance in such a way that it becomes, different from the ordinary functioning of the same substance. Well, that was one subject. And another subject which I wanted to take was the place of, you know, education and ethics and social organization in the creating perfection for man. That is the idea current is, he quotes it himself in Life Divine. I take a sentence from Life Divine to start this subject. What the modern spirit has sought for, what does it seek? Economic, social, ultimate. Economic, social, ultimate. An ideal material organization of civilization and comfort. The use of reason and science and education for the generalization of a utilitarian rationality which will give the individual a perfected social being in a perfected economic society. The idea is a social, economic, social ultimate, individual and collective. This is one driving force of modern collective life. At present, mankind is undergoing an evolutionary crisis in which is concealed the choice of its destiny. These are two from Life Divine. He is himself putting the problem. The problem is effort of modern spirit to create economic social ultimate, and if he succeeds, a perfected individual being, social being in a perfected economical society or economic society. A crisis is there in which mankind has to make a choice, whether it will be confined to exterior or outer effort, social, political, and economic, or whether it will bring about or try to accept the necessity of bringing about an inner change first. That is the problem. Problem is whether mankind can be persuaded to accept the necessity of an inner psychological change. Reason, science, and education are the means by which modern spirit wants to create individual and collective perfection. Try to think over these problems. Yes. Reason, science, and education. These are the only three means by which the modern spirit wants to create individual and collective perfection. What remains of the old spiritual values is moralized spiritualism or humanitarianism. Some element of what was true spirituality is turned into moralized humanitarianism, social ethicism. Social ethicism. These are to replace the old religious and spiritual idealism. You must have moralized humanitarianism, something good for everybody else, and you try to be goodwill for all, and truth and honesty and justice and things of that kind. And social ethicism and ethics because of social ethics. Granting that economic stress has a legitimate place in any scheme of reconstruction of collective life, the need to consider the adequacy of psychological means which modern man proposes to employ remains. We must consider whether the means which he proposes are sufficient to bring about that change which he wants to. To create that perfection, is it possible? Reason and science as psychological means or remedies can only help, but are not sufficient to solve problems now facing humanity. Whether reason and science can really solve, well, they can help, but cannot. This is the discussion which I am following the line of life divine, you see. This is perhaps being granted even by votaries of reason and science nowadays, after the experience of world which the world had in the last 40 years. After two world wars, they found that yes, reason is not able to solve problems. It can help, but it is by itself science and reason doesn't help. Well, that is, they were not admitting before, but now, after two world wars within a generation, they have come to accept that probably that is not so easy for reason and science to solve problems. I want to deal particularly with the item social ethicism, in fact, with ethics as an effective means to solve human problems. Let alone science and reason. If you take ethics, moral values, will it solve man's problem? That is also another question. It is very likely that the beginning of ethics was the sense of recoil that even the primitive man felt from painful experience of life. When some painful experience came, well, even the primitive man recoiled from it, and that gave him the sense of, well, first decision of values. This is good, this is bad. That's how it must have begun, isn't it? Something which he didn't give him the sense of pain, he thought good, and that which gave him pain was bad. When the growth of the sense of good and evil, particularly the sense of evil, was connected with the mind of desire at that time, good and evil had sensational value at that time. What gave pleasure was good, and what gave pain was bad or evil. Then the sense of good and evil advanced from the field of individual experience to society and acquired a utilitarian value. What was good, what did benefit society was good, and what did not benefit society was bad. So it became utilitarian and not sensational. What was considered beneficial to society was good, and its opposite was considered bad. Really speaking, the sensational and utilitarian views of good and evil can hardly be called ethical. There is no ethics about it. Ethics, really speaking, begins when the conscience awakes. When reason intervenes and tries to determine some principle or law of ethics, then the idealistic values of ethics come into the front and come into being. There is even a religious basis for ethics, declaring on the authority of religion what is good and what is bad. There is a religious attitude which decides, the problem of ethics. Conceptions of good and righteousness are determined by religions. For those that have a spiritual bent, the Upanishad draws the distinction between prayas, means that which is pleasant, and shreyas, that which is conducive to one's welfare. one's inner progress. The rational approach gives only the relative value to ethics because mind can only be selective. If you use only reason to decide ethical value, then reason will have to make a selection. And it is not decisive in the sense of being absolute, but it is, well, true in the sense of being selective. You selected that. The power is not inherent and the decision is not automatically right, but decision is dependent on the selective power of mind or reason. Besides, mind gives ethics a form in mind. Yes, what is good for one mind is bad. Yes, rational approach only gives a relative value to ethics because mind can be only selective. And in that case, what is good for one mind might be bad for another mind because it's only a question of being selective. Besides, the mind gives ethics a form in mind and in action in life, which becomes more or less artificial construction and not a spontaneous expression. Mind, when it takes ethics, gives a form in the mind or in life, and constantly it says it must be like that. Now, questions have to be decided each on their merits. Questions are not fixed, in the mind in a permanent attitude because each question can be taken up on its own merit and decided. It shouldn't be that once the mind has decided in every condition such and such a thing is good, well, then perhaps it will turn out to be bad in some situations, you see. So that here the fixing of values in the values by mind in life and mind, well, creates not a spontaneous but an artificial construction. With these limitations, ethics, the sense of moral values of good and evil, is indispensable at a certain stage of evolution. It arises from the perception of possibility of a higher idealistic harmony and the prevalence of a lower harmony in man's nature. Ethics comes into play when one notices that in his life, in his physical being, in his vital being, in his behavior, there is a play of, certain values or forces which is a lower rhythm. And his mind and his heart, they perceive the possibility of rising to another rhythm of perception, values, and conduct. What ethics wants is that this lower rhythm must be replaced by the higher rhythm which the mind or the heart perceives, the conscience perceives. Ethics comes to an effort, really speaking, by the awakened consciousness of man in the intellect or in the heart to substitute its higher values, its higher rhythm, in place of the rhythm that already governs the lower part of man's nature. His lower vital being, which is governed by impulse, by desire, by passion, by like, by dislike. Well, that rhythm is normally operative in man. It is this governs the whole of life. Practical life is governed by these things. When one perceives that there is a disparity between the two rhythms, the rhythm of the lower life and a possible rhythm of higher life, then he wants to make this possible rhythm actual by putting the discipline, putting the idea of ethics into, well, in life, in operation. It rises from the perception of the possibility of a higher idealistic or intellectual harmony and the prevalence of a lower movement in man's nature, the movement that he inherits from the animal, from the inconscience from which man has evolved. The aim of ethics is, really speaking, not to destroy the parts of nature that are wedded to the lower harmony, but to convert them. First, by controlling, to lessen, to tame, to purify, and to prepare to be fit instruments for the higher harmony. Because you can't destroy the instruments. You see, the nervous system or vital being is a necessity. Because the nervous system is governed by impulse, or the vital being is governed by the lower passions or lower movements of desire or instincts, you cannot destroy the instrument in order to get rid of the difficulty. I say that to convert them by first controlling them, to lessen, to tame, and to purify and prepare, and to make this instrument fit for the higher harmony which the mind and heart of man perceive as necessary for perfection. There is, in fact, a deeper basis for ethics, apart from the relative and selective process of the intellect. An inward sanction, an intuitive sense, or a psychic tact which is traditionally known as conscience. Ethics really depends upon conscience, awakening of conscience, not of intellect, not of heart, not only operative on the surface, but a deeper point of reference called ordinarily the conscience of man. Morality has thus to do more with the will than with any other part of human psychology. There are some thinkers who believe that morality also gives knowledge. It is truth in a certain sense and within certain limits. It gives one the knowledge of the world which is inconscient. It brings one in contact with elemental powers within one's own self in the lower nature. It brings in the subconscious and powers of the lower nature, vital nature. Secondly, the practice of ethics or morality tends to purify the ordinary nature and may serve as a beginning of dissolution of the ego, which is a great obstacle in man's inner progress towards the truth. Ethics establishes active impersonal value in man's nature, which requires the subjugation of his ego. If a man is to observe simplicity, non possession, or service, well, he has to curb all the time his ego, is it not? He can't do it for keeping up his ego at the most intense point. It establishes active impersonal values, truth, or justice, or service, or non possession. Well, these are impersonal, values. And it establishes impersonal values in man's nature, and these are made to subjugate, to control his ego. That thus far morality leads man to progress because it leads him to control his nature and also to curb his ego. In the process of man's evolution out of ignorance, therefore, ethics is an indispensable state. You have to pass through these ethics. At the basis of ethical endeavor, there is will to attain freedom in inner and outer life. When you say ethics, what does ethics ultimately want to do? Well, it wants to attain will to attain perfection. Whatever the concept of perfection, whatever the ideal of perfection one may have, he may have perfection only as intellectual idealism or moral value or some sort of outer work. But ethics is an endeavor to live the will to attain perfection in inner and outer life. Seeking for truth, for instance, good or beauty, is a sign that the will to perfection is awake in the human individual. When the human being wants to attain the truth, attain good, or realize beauty, well, that's a sign that will to perfection has awakened in him. There are people who think that duality that obtains in ethics, duality of good and evil, truth and falsehood, is eternal, and that there are two eternally conflicting forces at the root of cosmic nature or manifestation, and man's progress lies in constantly choosing one against the other, the good against the bad, to see the light against darkness, truth against falsehood. But a little thinking will show that there is no reason to grant an eternal antinomy in the working of cosmic nature permanently. Duality, in fact, is only in the mind as a necessary mood for its action. Duality is necessitated for the mind. Otherwise, mind can't act. And mind has to divide and act. Well, it has to divide good from what is not good and act. But duality is really in the mind and not there. The opposites of truth, good and beauty, have no eternity about them. Of course, so long as one is in the mind, good and truth are also relative. But there is absolute of good, absolute of truth, absolute of beauty, beyond mind, of course, where there is no possibility of falsehood or evil. It is like darkness whose existence depends upon light, but the contrary is not true. There is no absolute of falsehood. Absolute of truth can exist, but no absolute of falsehood. Besides, though the first awakening to the sense of truth, good, and beauty generally comes to the mind, yet at its root, it is much deeper seeking. It's not a mental absolute or mental good or mental truth which one is seeking, but the absolute truth, the infinite truth that is being sought. It is the soul of man that turns to these things, and because they are of the nature of the soul, they are not intellectual truths. They seek for beauty or truth or light, you see. Awakening to ethical values, attraction towards truth, good, beauty, towards nobility, and such other values of life, is the machinery provided by the supreme wisdom so that the all pervading ignorance may slowly turn to the light of knowledge. The all pervading knowledge, how is it going to turn to knowledge? By each point turning to truth or good or beauty or some higher value of life. Its ultimate aim is not merely to bring about a moral perfection, but to lead man towards the infinite. It will not be satisfied with whatever concept of truth the mind gives it. The moment mind has realized one aspect of truth, there will be another aspect of truth ready, waiting to be perceived and realized. It will stop only when one enters into the infinite consciousness. None of these great realities can be fully realized within the limits of mental consciousness. We cannot fully realize truth or good or beauty in remaining in the mental consciousness. It is the curing of the split existence which is the remedy. Remedy is to cure the split existence, the separatedness in which the mental consciousness lives. The existence is divided, and this division has to be set right. Sometimes an undue stress is given to external action in practice of ethics. As a social and conventional rule, well, there may not be much to say against it. But from the point of view of deeper psychology, one has to accept that action is not what it appears to the outside. It is a resultant of energy to bring, to energy of being. And there are many kinds of energies at work in producing a particular action. Action is the result of a very complex play of many forces. And we see that nature admits strength, power, and efficiency as elements in bringing about results in life. The value of action depends upon the source, its source in the being, for externally the same action may be the result of quite contrary forces. You cannot judge an action by its outer form. There is a very funny story in one of the books by Bengali writer. He was a very fine devotee, very fine soul. So he said that one man saw a boat coming in the river, and one man was had a bottle and he was drinking, and there was a woman with him. So he concluded in his mind that he must be drinking and it must be a party of people who are out for fun and spree and so on like that. That is appearance. When actually the boat came down, he saw that the man was there. The bottle was a bottle of water, and the woman with him was his mother. So you see, the appearance is very difficult to judge by. Any action you cannot decide by what it looks like, because it might be just the opposite. I give very often I give the instance of people who subscribe to war fund, for instance. If you see a list of people who have subscribed to the war fund, so and so, so much, so and so, so much, so and so, like that. Well, it looks as if all are subscribing to the war fund. Well, that is a common action. But if you see the value of the action, it is never the same. It is not subscribed from the same motive at all. You see, some subscription is due to pressure. Some is due to interest and consideration of trying to get a contract from the military. You see, some is due to, some competitive element in human life, that you and somebody else happen to be socially in the same position, and if he has given $100, you must give $100 to keep your position up. Is it not? It's nothing to do with war or anything of the kind. One subscribes absolutely on absolutely different basis. So action may look the same, but it's never the same. Ethics accept the position that life is a becoming and that there is a truth of becoming which man must realize. In that process of becoming through which the human soul evolves, the duality of good and evil, true and false, belongs to the mind. And the call on the human soul is of the infinite. The human being has to rise to the consciousness of infinity. And on that higher plane, the supermind, the soul rises above duality because it goes beyond mind and its ignorance. Ethics as an ultimate remedy for you know, man's perfection is an imperfect state, but it is an indispensable state through which the human soul must pass. Ethics is a stage and not a remedy. That finishes the subject of today. Now, tomorrow we'll take up collective life. Either we take up human cycle or ideal of human unity, perhaps human cycle, ideal.
Well, when we think of our outward advancement, our technical advancement, that has that's a very vital necessity because it also advances man. Now he's developing in that branch of his
direction, yeah.
The pursuit, and until he has fulfilled a certain degree of evolution there, he must pursue that course, and then he will come to develop inwardly. But I think that that's of great value, because if you have to go out and plow 100 acres with a little mule and one of these little sticks that you've seen them do in India, and you can do it with a great tractor, and have an agriculturist in a laboratory who prepares the seed and watches over the planting of that seed and examines the soil, and the tractor runs over it, and the irrigation ditches are dug, and the water is filtered and taken care of, and the crop is harvested at exactly the right time, and the process so that the food and vitamins and minerals are preserved. This all contributes indirectly to the advancement of being.
You see, there are two problems there. It's good to have advancement. I don't object to the advancement. The whole difficulty is American economy is on a different basis because you found this land virgin.
Yes.
Yes, that's it. And Americans, means Europeans, came here with, on the basis of science, already advanced a good deal in Europe. When they came here, science had advanced good deal. Railways were there, just beginning. Industrial revolution had just begun and was well on the way. So that they had not to go through the conditions or the changes which the other countries had to go through. You could straight away start with the latest advance of science here with a virgin country. You understand? The point was land was not occupied. Land was not cultivated. Forest value, you see, wealth was there. Mineral wealth was there. And all scientific knowledge was available. So it was applied, and therefore you can always find that builds up a structure of life which is very attractive and very successful and efficient from the outer point of view. This is right. Now, if you take that to India, the difficulty will be tremendous. First of all, if you take a tractor and plow 1,000 acres, about 2,000, 3,000 people will be thrown out of employment. Because here I traverse 400 miles without anybody. You can't travel in India 10 miles without meeting hundreds of persons. Even in desert, I am talking of Rajputana, which is boiling like a fire. Even there are people. So that it is a thickly populated country. Now, in that, there are still tracts where you can use this, and government is using it. Tractors where the land was not tilled by anybody, the government is putting the tracts. But the problem there is that introduction of machinery will create unemployment immediately on a large scale at any rate. Best that could be done is something like Japan, where industry, science applied to village industry scale, brought down to the need of the individual, is made available to the farmer or to the laborer. The application of science to small field, that would certainly save his labor, give him more efficiency, increase his product, and also, advance the standard of life. But a large scale application of such things, you see, first of all, We think like that we go on advancing and therefore some good is being done. But the result is a vicious circle if you watch carefully. You see, if you watch carefully, where is the advance going to stop? That's it. Then you will find that, yes, we'll go on advance creating more and more possibility of comforts for life, conveniences of life, life being rendered more easy, so to say, conveniences, comforts, and so on. Now, in the very production of these comforts and maintenance of the structure in order to produce the comforts, everybody will have to work, nothing else. So that we will be submitting ourselves to the material which was supposed to give us comfort. It is that which is give us discomfort. It was supposed to give us, now leisure and convenience. Instead, it gives you such an occupation that you see you want to get out of it. You see, that is the difficulty. That is exactly the false round or a vicious circle with this economic values put in the center of your collective life creates.
But I noticed this. I notice when I go, whenever I make a journey at these tremendous fields, and I don't like them because I know that they're purely utilitarian.
Not only that, I will give you one more, which I talked to them yesterday. That while in Los Angeles I traveled, there were at least some hundreds of, this, what is it called? Oranges rotting on the trees and falling down on the ground and simply going back to the ground. He has a machinery by which he has cultivated it. He's not using it. Hundreds. I am literally with my own eyes on the car and in the railway I have seen. I asked and they said that no, they don't do it purposely because they want to keep up the market price. Now, if that is the attitude, this is money. You are not looking to its utility. Nature has given you some return. You are not making full utility of what nature gives you. You want to submit this great bounty of nature by your small mind and reducing her to your proportion of economics. And that is what keeping up the trouble of mankind and the disequilibrium and want of balance.
Well, that doesn't hold true in all things because Mr. Duncan was telling me yesterday that it costs so much.
Yes, I know.
For the farmer to have insecticides and take care of his orchards, but he can't sell his fruit and make a living.
Yeah, so something has to be done. I don't say that, you see, this is one remedy he finds. Now, collective life has to come to tackle this problem and say how to take everything and make the farmer also feel that he is not starved or he is not underpaid. That is the problem, is it not?
Yeah.
So, let us say American public or American government or an organization of growers comes into being and says, no, we shall take every orange that is grown and utilize it. First, when you start with that only, you will solve the problem. It is wrong on the part of these people to start with that. We must keep up the price. It is wrong. You say, no, we will take every orange. Let us see. And then how to make now the farmer economically well paid or economically his life, make it what you call self-sufficient, to put it mildly, or at least make him feel that he is not starved or he is not unjustly treated. That's all. Somebody must come in the center and say, we buy up everything. Why? And give what is the cost? They must find out. The cost increases because you are keeping up the high price. Cost is increased. Why should there be more cost if things were cheap? Now, in India, I tell you the instance of how I look at it. One orange costs about, 1/4 of a dollar. And it's impossible to get it for the sick and the child and the old people. Impossible. And you can see that it is rotting here. What is the meaning of it? What kind of world one is living in? One has to find out now how to Therefore, yes, something has to be done, that's all. And done rationally. I don't say with an idealistic outlook and become unreal or, fly in the clouds. No. But something to tackle the problem to see, because you keep up a high price here, you have to pay more to your laborer. The laborer, when he buys the orange, he has to buy it at high price, is it not? He is asking more money because his living is costly. The laborer, the farmer is highly strung economically in difficulty because he has to spend. Now, how to make him spend less? It is by taking the whole of it in such a way and making it so common that all people get it cheap. If all people get it cheap, then he will also get his labor cheap comparatively.
Wished it was that simple.
Huh?
I wished it was that simple.
Yes, that's
but
it.
You see, this is an overall problem.
Oh, whole world problem, really speaking. At least one big country like America or some big countries in Europe, you see, they can tackle it on the whole national scale. It cannot be tackled by small groups or one state or one part. It is not easily soluble because it is very complex and complicated. It is complex. It is not simple. That I grant. But man has created complex problem. He has got to solve them. He can't back out of it now. Why did he do this? Then he has now to find a remedy. He must. You see, it requires first rising to almost a realization of oneness of humanity somewhere in your being. You must rise to a consciousness of humanity as one unit. Then you easily come to some conclusion and understanding organization. Everything will be set up when people who have the capacity to lead or capacity to govern these fields of life, they come to realize that we must all think about the problem of overall problem. Then there will be easy to find some way out. But each one is thinking, but if I do that, I will lose. Well, then that is the whole crux of the difficulty, psychological. Economics comes later. Psychology comes first. That's why I always say, problem is man. Problem is not man. Economics comes later. Psychology comes first. That's why I always say, problem is man. Problem is not man.
Johnny, have you heard of the Gazelle system that was used some in Germany for a period of time? It's a system whereby money depreciates. Do you think that would be of some value?
In the First World War, they did something like that, as far as I remember.
The murage money that is worth at the end of the year, is perhaps worth 98 cents instead of $1 or 99 cents.
Yes.
And it prevents hoarding of money, so people with a lot of money can't hold prices up because their money is depreciating, the same as the other fellow's goods are depreciating.
Yes, that is in the First World War. I think that is what Germany did. The pair of shoes cost about 29,000 marks. 29,000 marks after the First World War, because they had to pay the victors, you see. And in order to keep the German economy going, well, they devaluated their currency to such an extent that it became practically, you see, no value. Practically, it meant nothing.
It was to an extent after the Second World War. Pound of butter was about 300 marks. Usually it was about 2 marks.
I don't know about other countries, but I think I know a little bit about this country. I don't know much. But I think our biggest trouble is our government.
Yeah.
Our government makes price supports. When they support price, that is what causes your waste. You see, they'll pay a certain amount, some people to destroy what they raise.
Grow, yes.
They will. Now this happened here 2 or 3 years ago. I don't know whether it's still happening or not. They'll pay a man so much to let his ground lay idle, not raise anything. That's poor business. If the government would get the hell out of it and let price and demand take care of it,
yes.
Price and demand will balance itself off. But you've got to get the government out first. That's our trouble. I don't know what other people's troubles are. That's sure our trouble.
Well, but isn't it so that suppose the government is the people or made by the people?
It's made by the people, but Is communism made by the people? It's made by a small majority of people. That's my argument.
But in the mass, the people are ignorant, and it always comes back what the Purani say this stuff, right? To the people.
You can take the world over and the people are ignorant.
They're all
That's
ignorant.
the world over. We're ignorant here in one sense of the word. They're ignorant in India in another sense of the word. In Germany, they're ignorant in another sense. So we're ignorant all the world over.
Oh. So we're doing good things to start with others, ourselves.
That's the only place that you can start is with yourself.
Yeah, that's the
But
way
how
to
many people can we get to start with themselves?
Well, it doesn't look like today, but it might be a year from now and 20 years from now might be quite a lot.
No, it starts like that. You see, it's not the quantity, but the power and quality which works, you see. And it becomes immediately afterwards understood by people who can see. Then it goes a little faster in people. First, it starts with very few, one or two, but then groups actually can form afterwards. And those groups, when they are moved by this understanding and idealism, they can make themselves effective so far as they are concerned. Others only will see and imitate. Others will not be compelled. You can't compel them. It's not possible. But they might see and learn from it how to solve their problems without going through all the rigmarole of wasting the return and trying to maintain economy-centric outlook, which is creating so much trouble all over. You see.
It's terrible.
Well, the growers don't like to see it themselves. They like their product and they appreciate their product, and they don't like to see it that way themselves.
There are many people even in this country that could use that fruit.
Yes, exactly.
The thing I'm saying is that it's not only in agriculture. Your big problem,
Yes,
your big
all
problem
industries.
are in steel,
Steel, yes, coal and steel.
coal, and those are the ones that's got you stymied. When those prices go up, then labor goes up. Labor goes up. That's when your insecticides and everything goes up here. But your price of your product that you raise on these farms is still down where it was 10 years ago. But labor and the insecticides have gone up. You could buy a lug of peaches 10 years ago for $2. You can still get them for $2. But look where your insecticides are, your labor and all of that's way up here. It's not leveled off. And as long as the government steps in and supports steel prices and all of those things, that's where you progress at. In my opinion. Of course, that's just my opinion. I don't need to sell that to anybody. I don't expect it.
Historically, it's correct. But we have cooperatives. We've had cooperatives, and they fade, and then they come back again. We have vast farms that are cooperative. We have vast stores that are cooperative. The profits from these stores go back into the consumers who buy the goods. But they are bucked by the big firms, and they're bucked by the stock markets.
Yeah,
and
I
they're
know,
bucked
but
by
so
the
they're
store.
bucked by first the big firm, that's it.
Big firm outbid them or undersell
Well,
them?
they try to remove it from them, and
That's where your union comes in. That's your first bucker.
you have powerful interests that are watching every move and highly organized, and they are the powers of darkness. I mean, some of them are.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Not all together, no.
And I think if we follow all up in the system around about it comes back to all stuff. Not another way.
Yes, but people can't see that, no, not yet. But that is fine, but they can see.
Wow.
That's only by living. You can't make them see by argument. You see?
Learn, they say.
Can't. They will refuse to see. They won't.
I talked once with a man, and he liked I got it, the peaches or something. And he said, well, I don't like them raw. I like them cooked in a jar. Well, if he I told him, well, I have heard and I have seen that those peaches are dipped into solution chemically so the skin peels off and it's kind of toxic. Oh, you will say our government allows us to do this. He tried to grab me here. Our government is doing everything for us. But talk with him. Learn how to talk with the people. That will have to be an example, and if that they can see the light.
No, if it remains in the bottle or tin for months together, naturally something is happening there. I think it can't be standing all the time still. Unless if you put in the refrigerator, even changes can take place.
Yes.
Outside much more because of the temperature and heat. But even in refrigeration, you have to see the time limit and know within reasonable limits it's all right, 15 days or 1 month or like that. If it is all the time there, then the best is to test. To put a thing in for 6 months, take it out and ask somebody to see how it is. And you might find that it is not exactly as it was. One has to take care of these things. Nature processes are not fully all known, you see. And with all objects, things like fruit or milk and articles of food and so on, they have their own, you see, laws by which they work. And man has not known everything about them. The best is to take the fresh things as they come from nature with precautions so as to take out what can be there from outside. That is the safest course that one could adopt. All these artificial things are necessary because you produce so much and you have to send out to good distances. Therefore, you have to do all the refrigeration and protection and so on, which is necessary if you want to distribute the product on large areas at a good price. And a certain time you take the whole thing, then fix the price for the whole year in such a way that all the year round you can get the supply. That also you must see that the stock goes out at a certain time and it doesn't remain. If a certain crop is taken within 1 year or 2 years, nothing of it must remain. Now, who is going to do all that? You see, hard work. It's no joke.
What would you say, how much percent of people that go within would be enough change in the atmosphere to put the first round for the rest to go within? What percent will change the?
It's not percent, it's quality, it's power. It is really speaking not those people.
By number of people.
It is not by any outer thing at all. But what you will bring, that will work. Not X, Y, or Z will work. But that force, yes, the force which you embody and bring, that will work.
It doesn't take any number at all.
No. The minority of one to all. It can work in the minority of one to all. It only requires that firmness of will and faith and courage to go through all obstacles and difficulties. That's all. Those difficulties seem to be worked out for one man, but really they are worked out for many people.
Well, that's what's true of Linda.
Exactly. That's why I always say that I wouldn't have even spoken one word about the possibility if I didn't see and know that it can be done. You see, if I say that theoretically, people will say it's all philosophy. But here something can happen on the plane of matter and of life. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes a lot of concentration, hard work, organization, sincerity, all. But it can be done, and that is a great thing. Such an impossible thing, if it can be done, that is exactly worth doing. You understand? The point is, it's not easy. Nobody could say it is easy. That it could be done like that. It is childish. But because it is difficult, perhaps it is worth doing. Easy things are there already, some temporary palliative which takes you over some little difficulty of money or economics and so on. But to go to the fundamental and tackle it, that takes a lot of hard work and that persistence of will and sincerity. When you have worked out some difficulty, they are worked out for many people. It looks as if you have worked out for yourself only. But really speaking, it's a lot of working out for the universe. Lot. In fact, you see, when you try such a thing, it is X that is doing it, you say. But the opposition or difficulties that come are universal. They are coming from the universal, and when he has successfully met them, well, naturally he has made a way in the universal already. Lord.
She already know, if the will, as it is now, of mankind is kind of scattered, now we see it being unified in communism.
Yes, not only communism, you know.
Yeah.
Why?
Yes,
Only communism. Even is uniting also.
yes, but I think we see this will at work. Now, that can be for us in the spiritual sense. I mean, in real sense. I don't mean the fancy, cloudy sense, but I mean where the will of man is directed towards a selfish end. That will can be redirected towards another selfish.
Yeah, inner life, growth in inner life, you see, realizing his own inmost reality or truth, his self or true self in him. That is, when his will turns, then he will find that his self is self of all.
But it can be done on a universal scale as well as a private, but it has to have the influence from.
Yes, from one side, it is only the individual who is the initiator or originator. He is the one man who makes progress possible. Collectivity cannot be made to move or accept the necessity of movement. Collectivity likes to remain what it is. It's the individual who sees that these fellows are standing quiet, he moves forward. And when he moves forward, 10 people follow, 100 people follow. It's like that others follow. There, that she has gone to the hospital and she is missing the class. She's already feeling very strongly. In his speeches, have you seen political speeches of Sri Aurobindo? I don't know whether the book is here. Speeches of Sri Aurobindo, which he gave in political life. And there were 7 articles which he wrote about passive resistance then, early, 90s, 97, 5, 6, and so on. So those you read, and then you read what discussion we have in the evening talks. And then you will be able to understand his attitude. His attitude is such that he is prepared to take non-violence as a expedient and a policy where you can find it workable. In the present collective life of men particularly, the application of non-violence has severe limits. You cannot make it an absolute rule and act in collective life today. It would be good if one could, but you can't risk the fortune or the destiny of the nation on such a high idea. Gandhi pleaded for it during the whole of his lifetime. And even then, in the very last year of his life, he had to permit a defense of Kashmir. He had to say actually to the India government that I support your sending the army to Kashmir. This I am quoting from his life, and there is no greater apostle of non-violence than Gandhi today.
Yes.
You see? So, you can see how severe are the limitations and the necessity of compromise that it forces even the best man with the best of motives to accept, because you can't be blind to facts of life. And secondly, how are you sure that non-violence is really the last spiritual reality? 2 difficulties. One is the application to practical life, and another is an assurance that this is really the final and the highest spiritual goal. One could risk that if that was given, but that also is not forthcoming. You cannot swear that non-violence is conceived by the mind. Mind conceives of non-violence almost, like it's an outer act or a moral understanding or a rational principle it holds. But at a basis, when you go to the base of non-violence, it comes to unity of the soul. The spiritual basis of it is unity of the soul. Now, in the unity of the soul, then, you have to see whether violence or what is called violence finds a place. That is the problem. You see, really speaking, that is the problem. Problem is whether in a unity of being which multiplies itself in various forms, It is possible to have a place for what people or the mind calls violence. Really speaking, you see, the language also is deceptive partly. What is violence? It is really resistance sometimes. All use of force, can we say it is violence? You see, violence is a pejorative term. In fact, it prejudges the question in advance. A soldier who defends his country, now, I don't know whether we can call it violent. If he has to defend his country, militarily or with physical force, let us say, is he violent or is he only reacting to violence? He is not violent. He is resorting to a reaction. There is a sort of a perpetration of violence upon his patriotism, and he is reacting to it only. They will say in the moralist language, this is counter violence. It's not so. You see, violence first of all requires a use of a vital impulse. And in the calculated way in which modern, warfare takes place, there is very little room for emotion or vital, passionate or intense movement of feeling. Very little. It is terribly cold, rational calculations that are at work. Cold, absolutely. What you will do, what they will do, how much you and what you are. There is nobody who is angry. There is nobody who is angry. Yes, that's it. Violence requires a sort of a rising into a temper where one is losing his balance generally in a violent mood. Here it's a question of a man mind fully calculating the necessity of a situation, and you can't help it. Now you can say, well, let us find out an alternative way. That is possible to try, which the people now are trying at their best. I mean, in the UNO, what they try is that no, we shall not do it. We shall not do it till the last. Let us see whether we can solve the problem or come to some compromise or understanding without coming to that clash. But whether clash has a place in human life, and whether man's movement towards the goal of truth or perfection can necessitate his participation in conflict. After all, even when you act non-violently, in your mind, you have a reaction. You can't help that. Supposing you hold yourself back from a physical, contest or physical conflict, but if somebody who is doing injustice or wrong or doing something which is violent and you remain non-violent, you are resisting internally all right, is it not? You are resisting internally all right. So that the struggle doesn't cease. Struggle is removed from the physical or material plane to an inner plane.
Well, I could very quickly understand why Aurobindo says, well, it is better to fight than to
submit.
It's better to fight than to
submit
or than to maintain a present system of things when change is needed. That I have sympathy with, but the rest it sounds very good, and yet I'm just a little troubled. I'm not quite.
I would like you to read this one chapter in the Gita, the Creed of the Aryan Fighter. Essays on the Gita. Borrow from here, first volume. There is a chapter headed Creed of the Aryan Fighter. That's a very detailed answer to the position of non-violence. Very detailed answer. He doesn't say that he believes in violence. Shendra is not a believer in violence, don't make a mistake. But he says that there are situations in which you can say that non-violence is not applicable, and what people term violence means a struggle or taking up a conflict, might become necessary. You have to act. You cannot simply hold to a dictum that because I don't fight physically, I'm maintaining non-violence. Because yes,
there's a difference.
He gave a very pertinent instance of old Indian mythological incident, which I remember entries in that book. This Creed of the Aryan Fighter, that chapter. The story is like this. Vasishtha was a great sage, and he had a cow which is called the cow that can comply with all your desires, supply all that you want. It is called the wish-giving tree, is it not? You have an idea of wish-giving tree? Yes, the cow was a wish-giving cow. So you can get anything from that cow. Now this Vasishtha Rishi, the sage, had a cow, wish-giving, and a king came with an army on march, and he was in the forest, and he came to the hermitage of the sage. And the sage said, all right. He said, I want to camp. He said, yes, you can camp. He said, I have got many large retinue, and I didn't bring all the supply up to here. He said, it doesn't matter. I have got my cow. You will get everything. So, well, the whole army was fed. You see? Now, the king thought this is a good idea. This is wrong. What is this taxing and all that? Then you can better get the cow. It's quite simple. So he said to the rishi that he wants the cow. Rishi said, no, this cow is a gift to me. She has come of her own. She is a conscious cow. I can't command her. I can't give it to her even if I want to. So he said, I will take it by force. Well, it's your business. He was not violent. He said, well, that's your business. If you want, use. If you think it is good to use force, you can use. I won't resist. So the king wanted to take possession of the cow, as you say, violently. So the cow went to the rishi. She was a conscious cow. So she went to Vasishtha and said, you must protect me. He said, well, I don't believe in violence or resistance like that. So you can protect yourself if you like. So the cow said, all right. So when they came to take her, she began to fight. You see? The result was that when he was taking the cow back to his capital, other armies attacked this force. Other groups of people who were, tribes that were on the way, they attacked him. And he was compelled to release the cow. This is the story. And Sri Aurobindo draws this from attention to this, from this, that when you remain non-violent, but with a will to resist, the will acts. And that will may end in ultimate actual violence on the man, not by you, by somebody else. You understand? Say, let us take Gandhi. He fasts. And when he fasts, then he declares that he fasts. So thousands of people, think that this is wrong. Whatever he is fighting against is wrong. Is it not? Well, then he doesn't fight, he doesn't do anything, he simply fasts. But the will of so many is awakened to resist against that against which he is fasting. What happens is they take out a procession. Well, the authority stops the procession. You understand? Yes. Then they fight. Now, Gandhi is non-violent, but who is responsible? If you study, yes, that's it. So she says that a man remaining non-violent under provocative conditions uses a pure impersonal will which creates vibration in the cosmic will in such a way that it may, not always will or must, but it may end ultimately in a far greater violence than he himself alone had fought. Do you understand?
Yes.
If he had resisted, perhaps no riot could have taken place. Only one man would have gone to jail. But because he sits quiet, whereas 510,000 people are, well, there is a clash. Then for the clash, you can say, I'm not responsible. But spiritually, if you go deep, you must say that there is at least some responsibility. You cannot wholly shake it off from your head. And that is how we explain that remaining non-violence outside with a will to resist will create a wave in the cosmic consciousness in which ultimately precipitation of violence on the most material plane might become inevitable. And the one who is non-violent might be responsible for it. That. Get something to think about. No hurry. There's no hurry about these problems. Chicago, he wants to have 40 acres of land there on the hill. Fine hill it is, and it can certainly grow fruits, I know. But he says that this, what is that skulk or something that digs into the ground?
Skunk?
Skulks.
Skunk.
Oh, skunks, why should they not eat? Let them eat. Then I said, why should you have a farm? Don't have a farm. You see, he wants to. You see, if some pest comes or some birds come and peck, you have to prevent them. Otherwise, how will you have your crop? Here it is not so much, but in India it is terrific. You have no idea. The number of monkeys that are in India, and supported by the Indian stupidity of mind that you should not destroy the monkeys, with the result that the crops, one fourth, one half, one third, any amount is destroyed. You must be absent for 1 hour in 365 days to lose all your crop. If you go to a farm, you say fair, the farmer goes for a fair, finish, the whole thing is over. Almost a year's labor. Now, you can't risk that for non-violence anyway. With all due deference to non-violence, I can say that they have a right to live. Now, you can argue. Isn't it? They have equal right to live. Basically, philosophically, and in idealistic condition, when you metaphysically solve the problem, why should man displace anybody? That will bring you to the fundamental problem of struggle for existence. Why should man want to make a place for himself? Then you say, oh, that is the law, that is how life lives. Progress is possible only if you live. Truth can be realized only if you live. So the first proposition is to live. Well, then in order to live, you displace at least those that don't agree with your mode of living. You have to. His artistic nature, and therefore he says, no, why shouldn't they say they are destroying everything, but what can I do, and so on. I said, you can do, certainly. You can put a fence, you can put defense, you can put poison, but you get rid of them. And I know that it can be done. There are people down there who are doing the farms below. So how they are doing, and why you are not able to do? You can't work with those ideals and have some practical result, you see. You can't. You have to look at the problem and see. You can do minimum, that I understand. You need to go out of your way to exterminate anything or so on. But you have your own line where you sit down and protect yourself. You can't expose yourself to such thing and invite difficulties or ruin, practically.
You shouldn't destroy them deliberately just for the sake of destroying.
That's it. It is. He's protecting his own trees. See, he had put some, I think a fruit tree had already grown, good size, 8 feet. And because the roots were eaten up, killed. Apricot, I think. It was apricot.
Well, what do you think then of the techniques that have been used, say, in the South of the United States, the Negroes struggling for equal rights?
Yes,
And
yes.
this is an example where the American pacifist movement has largely guided them into nonviolent methods of protest.
Yes, that is good. That is a good thing. It's not necessary for every problem to be solved in a way in which you invite a outer conflict. Because an organization of large number can make itself very effective. It's numbers. India got freedom not because, India was very strong, but India had large numbers. And if you get a large majority on your side to vote for your program, then everyone giving his little bit makes a big impression, very big impression. So that if the community that is unjustly treated or feels it unjustly treated, if it can organize its attitude quietly in a passive way, it can awaken the conscience of the majority or the more powerful group. You see, it can. It will also depend upon the group. The group here is not composed of barbarians. The group is composed of people who have some idea of right and justice and so on. They wouldn't be simply, blindly destroying people that they did 2 centuries back. You see, now they won't do that. The exercise of such values requires a height of collective life and rising to higher values. Whole collective life must have risen to higher values in order to make the operation of such values practically possible, you see.
Do you think that the freeing of the equal rights of the Negroes could come faster if there was some violence involved?
No, I don't think. Because you are one community, you see, what you are judging of mixing up two things. They are not two opposed communities. It is not as if like, say,
I see, yes.
France, yes, one state.
Yeah.
And it's a geographical and national one unit with an economic and political one interest. Therefore, such a division is not necessary. If the Mexicans attacked, for instance, or if somebody else did, then probably that might be necessary. But in a organized nation unit, in a collective life where life has run into channels of cooperation along many lines, it's not necessary to resort to this sort of resistance. I don't think mere assertion of will and collective life would make itself effective. Would certainly make.